Chatisserie, written and read by Likky Chan. Chapter 1.2. 2 hours earlier, Jane was still at home, getting ready for her first ever in-person meeting with a New York-based literary agent. After months of chatting via video calls to discuss edits, and then having made several rounds of revisions, Jane finally completed her novel. It happened that the literary agent was in town, so they agreed to meet at a cafe in Boston on Newbury Street. The next step, the bigger, more daunting step, was to begin submissions with a few publishing houses. The day that the literary agent offered Jane representation was one that she deemed the most glorious, most beautiful day of her young life. To receive affirmation that she was on her way to becoming a published author was a childhood dream come true. On the number 1 bus from Cambridge into Boston, Jane leaned her head against the window, her eyes roving over the cityscape as anxiety gnawed at her heart. For 5 years, she had been living and breathing this story. It was finally time to share it with the world, but was it ready for the world? At some point, her head banged against the glass, knocking her awake. When did I fall asleep? Looking out the window, she realized the bus had already crossed the Mass Ave bridge and was quickly approaching Newbury. Jane grabbed her backpack and stumbled off the bus. 2 blocks away should have been the cafe. Not this made-up cafe, not Chatisserie, but the real one, the one where she should be right now, sitting across from her literary agent. Oh no, my meeting! Still sitting on the sidewalk curb, Jane sprang up to her feet, causing a torrent of blood to rush to her head, and for a moment she was woozy. As her body swayed, a woman appeared out of nowhere and placed her hands upon Jane's shoulders to keep her upright. Are you okay? Jane blinked rapidly. The woman looked like one of the minor characters in her novel. Her name was... Magnolia? Jane asked. Surprise crossed the woman's face. No one really calls me that. Everyone knows me as Nola. Have we met before? Over the course of the creation of the novel, Jane had created many random characters, some with deep backstories, others with merely a name. Nola Lee was a ceramicist Jane jotted down on a whim after taking a pottery class one time, but she had abandoned the character long ago. Why was she here? Rather than responding to Nola's question, Jane said, I need a minute. She plopped back down on the curb, overwhelmed with meeting another one of her characters. Were they all here in this world, walking and breathing, just like her? Squinting her eyes up at the sky, a new thought popped into Jane's head. I need to find the bus stop. After a pause, she murmured, It's near Chatisserie. Did you say Chatisserie? Nola asked. Yes. Do you know it? I'm heading there right now. Want to go together? I should have known. Nothing here can be a coincidence, Jane thought as she nodded in agreement. After Jane's dizziness subsided, they both started towards the cafe. It was at this time that she noticed Nola was dragging along a rusty red wagon filled with her boxed wares. A squeaky sound from the wagon wheels accompanied them as it rolled along the sidewalk. My ceramics studio is a few blocks from here, Nola said when she caught Jane looking at her wagon. The cafe we're going to. The owner serves his food exclusively on my porcelain pieces. In return, I go there practically every day for my tea or afternoon snack. That's a nice symbiotic relationship, Jane said. I guess you can say that we're each other's most loyal customer, Nola said with a grin. Peering out from the corner of her eye, Jane couldn't help but marvel at how uncanny Nola's appearance was compared to how she had imagined her. It was as if someone had lifted Nola from her brain and created a 3D living version. Jane felt the same feeling of awe when she first laid eyes on Eliza. These people from her novel had come alive. Correction. Jane had somehow fallen into the city of Carolina where these people lived. But the question was always the same. How was this possible? At the entrance of Chatisserie, they parted ways. Nola entered the cafe while Jane headed towards the end of the street, searching for the glass-paneled bus shelter for the number 1 bus. For the next 30 minutes, she ran back and forth between the cafe and the corner of an intersection where she was convinced she had gotten off the bus, but she couldn't figure out if she was in the right spot. She waited for an MBTA bus to roll down the avenue, but one never did. Winded from circling the area over and over, a terrifying feeling began to take hold because she realized in earnest that there was no bus stop. Jane stood in a stupor, panting from exhaustion, her clammy palms pressed down on her thighs at the street corner. If this wasn't a simulation, then she was trapped in some effed up fever dream. She pinched herself as hard as she could, letting out a yelp because it hurt. "You're still here?" Jane lifted her head to see Nola and her empty wagon. "I'm not sure what you're trying to do, but maybe you should take a break. You're going to get heat stroke if you stay out here like this. Why don't you come inside? They have the best drinks and desserts in town." Worn down from her circumstances, Jane nodded in defeat and followed Nola into the cafe. 2 young women were walking out and giggling as they inspected their phones. "He really won the face card lottery," one said with a smitten smile. Intrigued, Jane snuck a glance to check out the photo on their phone screen. Through the glare, she managed to catch just a glimmer of the aforementioned man. A distant memory began niggling at the back of her mind, but it slipped away when Nola pushed her towards an empty spot in the cafe and went off to make an order. While the air-conditioned air was satisfyingly comfortable, it didn't deter the sweat from continuously rolling down her temple. She was grateful she had worn a white dress and sneakers today, for the weather had turned very hot. Her bones felt soft from the exertion. Mustering what little strength she had left, she dabbed at her forehead with the back of her hand. Staring out of the large glass window, she zoned out, lost in thought, pining for another world. A man's voice interrupted her thoughts. "Our signature Madeline trio," he said. Jane looked up to see a pair of curious eyes studying her. A flash of recognition finally registered in her mind. The face from the phone. She should have realized it sooner. It's him, she thought. The proprietor of Chatisserie, Evan Cha, her second male lead. End of chapter 1.2. To be continued. Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe.